Hi YouTubers, and I'm back for another YouTube video of what would have happened if this were in real life, RhinoTMRTGamePlay series. Now, I tried over and over again, and I mean, it kind of does make perfectly good sense. I mean, I'm trying to avoid, there being, background noise and whatnot. Yeah, it's what I'm trying to avoid. It's what I'm trying to avoid, and yet I am doing a good job at it, which of course is actually very obvious. And hopefully, I mean, I do have an idea and a topic, in which case it's actually very obvious. Yeah, hopefully that is. So, yeah. And I mean, me and Shane, we might come back. We might come back to doing school lunch YouTube videos, which of course is kind of what I wanted to tell you, and all that. I mean, hopefully I would be doing it, and then later I would be. It's just very obvious that for everyone else to know, which kind of does make perfectly good sense. Yeah, so I guess that kind of does make a lot of sense. So yeah. So without further ado, this is what would have happened if the Casper 2 movie were in real life. So we cut open to the beginning where Casper and the ghostly trio, they're all enjoying themselves. Kathleen, Harvey, and Dr. Harvey, they're all enjoying, Dr. James Harvey, they're all enjoying themselves in, their mansion. You know what I'm talking about, right? So, yeah, they're all enjoying themselves until when the ghostly trio actually uses Dr. James Harvey's phone to actually contact the Spooky and Hoyle from the, Spooky and Hoyle. You remember Spooky and his girlfriend from the other Casper TV shows? I figured why not bring him in here. And actually, seeing how we're close to Halloween, I figured why not do this one. So, though, then we get introduced to Spooky and Hoyle, who Spooky is actually Casper's twin cousin, who of course is actually one of the antagonists. And then, of course, they're enjoying their date. Spooky and his girlfriend, they're enjoying their date in New York, which kind of does make a lot of good sense. In which case, I figured why not, put some of the characters from the Casper TV shows into the Casper 2 movie. Then, of course, we get introduced to the Scare School from Casper's Scare School TV show. Then, of course, we get introduced to them. You know, the vampire guy from the Casper Scare School TV show actually also appears as an antagonist, but both those two people are actually both those two people, the Spooky and the vampire guy from the Casper Scare School, are actually minor antagonists. The main antagonist is actually the Dibs from the is actually the character Dibs from the first Casper movie. So it turns out that he's the main antagonist which sets him up to be the main antagonist right after the other main antagonist from the first Casper movie, which would set thus it would set up the other thus it would set up the Dibs guy from the Casper 1 movie, which would set him up to be the villain of the main villain of the main antagonist of the Casper 2 movie. So the Dibs from Casper 1 actually knows what happened to her partner, remember that woman from the Casper movie. Yeah, so the guy who got thrown out of the window in the Casper movie actually finds out that she's no longer with him. So he, of course, is later set up to be the main villain, and well, Dibs from Casper would actually go to the same mansion that where Casper and his friends and the ghostly trio are, only to find out that the ghostly trio actually scare Dibs again. And then, just like in the original movie, we get a Ghostbusters we get a Ghostbusters cameo from Ray, as Ray Stantz is in the movie again, which is actually kind of very obvious. There's just like that. There's the same but different. It is the same. Now note that the same cameos and the same cameos from the Casper movie actually appears in the sequel, but in different ways. For the Ghostbusters cameo from Dan Aykroyd, he actually appears helping out Dibs in order to take over the mansion, while Casper and the Ghostly Trio and the Harveys are out, enjoying life as it is. In which case, you can easily tell why. So, yeah. So Casper and the Ghostly Trio find out that their mansion, or manor, I forgot what it was called. You can help remind me. Has been taken over by Dibs. So now they need the Harveys' help. Now they need Kathleen Harvey. Now they need Kathleen Harvey and James Harvey to put an end to Dibs and take back the manor that Casper and the Ghostly Trio actually own, which kind of does make perfectly good sense. So basically, the remember the Dibs guy from the Casper movie, from the Casper 1 movie? Well, he's actually set up to be the main villain of the Casper 2 movie. Then of course we get like a few couple of romantic scenes with like Casper McFadden and Kathleen Cat Harvey. We get a few couple of romantic scenes with them, seeing how they celebrate St. Valentine's Day together. So, yeah, I figured why not add that in there. In which case, it actually does perfectly well, and then it turns out that Dibs is actually using the kibosh guy from the Casper scare school and the other stuff. It turns out that Dibs is actually using kibosh to take over both the overworld and the underworld, and technically become like more powerful. And that's how the whole thing is setting up. So here you can see exactly how it's going perfectly well. I mean, it's exactly how I'm envisioning it, and this is exactly how I'm envisioning it in here, which kind of does make a lot of sense. So meanwhile, after Casper and the Ghostly Trio Casper and the Ghostly Trio are, and Kathleen Cat Harvey and Dr. James Harvey are all taking a road trip back to the manor, mansion, which I forgot what its name was, as they appear only to find that Dibs has actually taken control of the mansion itself, and he's also bringing back the main antagonist from the first Casper movie, but as a human again. It turns out that he uses his power. He actually uses some powers and he actually uses the ghostly powers of Kibosh to actually free Dibs from the Casper 1 movie, to actually free his friend from the underworld, or whatever it was called, which of course he uses it, and then the main villain from the Casper 1 movie, if you remember her name, then please help remind me, has actually been freed. So now and then of course we get a big fight and battle scene, for which of course it's Casper, the Ghostly Trio, and Spooky and Foil, and the two people, all the people from the scare school, aside from that vampire guy, and all of them, they go against Dibs and that vampire guy. They go against them and Spooky as well. So they go against them in a big fighting battle scene. There's a lot of like a lot, a, so many parts of their manor and mansion are destroyed, which kind of just make perfectly good sense. So this is the movie. So Casper 2 actually gets the manor from the Casper 1. In Casper 2, it actually gets destroyed, well, most parts of it, so it feels more abandoned than ever. And then of course we get introduced to Casper's mother, then of course we get introduced to Casper's mother, who of course is actually cannot show who Casper's mother is actually revealed to be an angel without an actual voice, with only with voices and not showing themselves, which gives Casper the courage to actually put an end to Spooky, the vampire guy from the Casper Scare School, and the Dibs guy from the Casper 1 movie. So, yeah, that of course gives him that courage, and then I guess that kind of does get rid of them. But then eventually they said that they would return and with someone else, in which case that kind of just makes sense. And then that same guy, and then that other cameo, the guy that got his head turned, that cameo with the guy that got his head turned backwards, cameo person, that guy actually returns yet again, and he makes like a few couple of lines. Yeah, I guess that kind of just makes sense. And then of course, and I also forgot to mention Wendy the Good Little Witch is actually appears in Casper 2. Yeah, I forgot to mention that would be happening. So yeah, they all appear in there. Casper, Wendy, and the Harveys and the Ghostly Trio. They all are, and all the students from the Scare School, well, except for that vampire guy from the Casper Scare School. They all enjoy each other, and yeah, that kind of does make perfectly good sense. They celebrate Spooky and Poyle and the vampire guy from the Scare School. I forgot his name. And of course Dibs from the Casper 1 movie. They celebrate them being gone, and well, them being banished they banished them to a much darker place. And then of course everyone has a perfectly good ending, and then they all live happily ever after, the end. And then the credits roll, and then I'd add in a post-credit scene with the Ghostbusters cameo for Race Dance, and with him creating a portal to the underworld so to keep everyone safe. And not only that, but there's also a Ghostbusters cameo from not only from Dan Aykroyd, but from Bill Murray, Harold Ramis, and Ernie Hudson. They all appear alongside Dan Aykroyd's character, and they all jump into the underworld so that they can get rid of some ghosts, and so that they can take over, so that they can make the underworld just like the overworld. And that's my what would have happened if the Casper 2 movie were in real life. Now, I actually think it was a perfectly good idea. I mean, it actually was a perfectly good idea. I mean, I was kind of thinking, oh, well, for Casper 2, I could just make the Dibs person from, the guy that remember Dibs from the Casper 1 movie, and how he got, blasted out of that window? Well, this is what would have happened if he came out of that window and just came back to be the main villain. So yeah, it kind of was a good idea. I kind of couldn't think of anything else, and yeah, it kind of is great to add some of the TV show characters in there to the Casper 2 movie, so yeah, I guess that's kind of great, yeah. And that's it for today. Peace out. Bye-bye.